Good morning. It is so good to be with you this morning. I'm the Reverend Christina Branum-Martin. Thank you so much. We are so glad you're here. Today is such a big day for me. It's a day of celebrating with you that I'm starting with you on my third month. It feels like it's been a year in a lovely way because I've been getting to know so many people. I'm learning names, but I'm still learning more. And I'm learning more every day about you and your strong and beautiful, loving community. I'm also so thrilled today to be celebrating with glitter. You'll see a little bit of sparkle on me, and there'll be more glitter to come. I offer a special welcome to those who are visiting for the first time, or perhaps even online, or are watching later. I learned from those of you who are coming to visit that you have been watching us online and checking us out. And I think that is so important for you to know who we are, and coming into the building for the very first time, that's a nerve-wracking thing. And so I honor the boldness it takes to step over that threshold and to come into a new community. As a Unitarian Universalist congregation, we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person through anti-racism, anti-oppression, support of the LGBTQ plus community, working for reproductive justice, voting rights, and so many other issues that call us to stand on the side of love. And we seek to build a beloved community not only here, but in the community in which we live and in the world at large. Everyone is invited to social time after. We ask that you go out this door and go around this direction so that you don't have to walk through the kitchen. And we look forward to meeting you. At 11:25, the children and all the adults are also invited to religious exploration, and you'll find listings of those options on your order of service. Today might be a little long. The service is important, and stories are being shared from the heart. So if we go a little long, just give us a little grace, because glitter is involved. And that's a good thing. I would like to ask our chalice lighter to now come forward, Ali Tomic.
When I finish lighting this chalice, I would like to say a quote by someone I forgot the name of. Okay. Hurting someone's feeling as easy as throwing a rock into the ocean, but you shall never know how deep the rock shall go.
If we can share in the affirmation now, we need not think alike to love alike. And for those of us who are extroverts in the room, this might be your favorite moment of the service. If you would take a moment to turn and greet your neighbor. Today we come to celebrate and honor National Coming Out Day. This day is for all of us, and especially important for those in the LGBTQ plus community, both here in this congregation and in the wider world. I want to tell you before this service begins that today we will celebrate, yes, and we will acknowledge the difficulties of surviving in this world as a queer person. Hatred, suicide, and death will be mentioned, as will survival. Survival, celebration, and the offerings of blessings on living life out fully as your full, glorious, and beautiful self. And please know that if you need support, that this community is here to offer it. Reach out to your neighbor, reach out to me, and we hope that this will be a safe place to fall. May this service today inspire you to believe in the redeeming power of love. Let's sing together number 1004, Comfort Me, in the teal hymnal, and the words will be on the screen. 1002. Thank you. We come to the moment of joys and sorrows and concerns and sharing the matters of our heart. And Riley Lyons will join me now for putting stones in the bowl. Thank you. For this morning's ritual, we have water, and we have river stones. The stones are both smooth and the stones have weight. They're indicative of both life's pleasures and times of ease, as well as the burdens and times of heaviness. The water receives these stones with ease and calmness. Each week you are invited to write a joy, a sorrow, or a concern in this book, or email it to pastoralcare@emersonuu.org. And if you're online, we invite you to recreate this ritual at home. Perhaps you have a bowl of water. Perhaps you have a flower or a stone you might want to place in that water. And we honor all that you are carrying. The first stone that we place is in honor of the Cherokee and the Muskogee nations of the indigenous peoples who lived here before us. The second stone that we place is for those wrongly enslaved here who labored on this land. And the third, especially poignant today, as we know bombs are falling in Gaza and in Israel. We place this stone for current conflicts all across our globe. Within our community, we have a few things to share. The first is a celebration that Alex Spitzer has left the hospital after breaking his legs. He's at home recovering with family, but the recuperation time will be long and he would love your company. So please know you are welcome. Our hearts also go out to Jenny Haynes. She says, the toes of my left foot were broken as a result of an automobile collision with my airbag. The airbag went off during the collision, and the mobility is limited, and I will be navigating recovery in the near future. I am not good at slowing down, she says, but I will need to do that for a while. The next is from Gail Passo. For my family in Israel and all those in danger, I am so worried about them. And the last is Brian Dunn is celebrating the 13th anniversary with his wife, Sarah. It's lovely. Perhaps you are carrying other things in your heart or people in your mind, and I'd like for you to say out loud in a whisper, if you'd like, those that you are holding in your hearts today. In thankful awareness, let us say the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness. These words are printed in your order of service. And the ushers now will join us as we move into sharing the basket. One way we put our prayer of loving kindness into action is by partnering with other organizations who bring us love and kindness and justice to the world. And we encourage members and friends to support their work financially as we share our weekly collection, and also by participating in direct action with these organizations. Our partner this month is MUST. And Anne, could you tell me what MUST stands for? Is it an acronym?
Yes, but I don't. Ministries United.
Joe, what's MUST acronym stand for? Ministries United for Service and Training. Thank you. I know that this organization serves this community with food, with resources, and with support as they are going through times of hardship. And we are so proud to be able to offer half of our offerings today with MUST. For those in the sanctuary, know that your donation will be received with gratitude. And there's a card in your basket that is passed every month that gives you opportunities to share later so that you can share with other means, sometimes with a text. And now we have a fabulous story read by a fabulous reader. If for those who are young or young at heart would like to come forward, it'd be great to be able to see the pictures.
I don't know. Oh, there I am. All right, so before we start the story today, I have to tell everyone that my husband makes fun of me for saying the word the way I do. I grew up in a different part of the country than here, so when you hear me say crayon, it's supposed to be crayon, I think, so I will probably slip into my Washingtonian accent with this word, so just know that's what it is, okay? All right, today's story is called Red. That story is.
It's what what he was trying to be and whatever everyone thought he was another color or someone else, and he wasn't that. He was trying and trying, but his true colors are blue, and that's who he is.
Right. Do you?
It's like you can't paint without a paint.
That is right. So did you hear what she said? He was trying to be what somebody else wanted him to be, and he finally learned how to color with his true colors. So the message today is, be who you are and do what you know is your true colors. Yes. That is absolutely perfect. He said in third grade, his teacher had a poster that said, be yourself because everybody else is taken. That is perfect. All right, shall we sing our song? Yeah? And shall we have him join us? Love is the doctrine of His church, a quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is His prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve Him in kind in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with each other. Thus do we promise to each other.
Hello, I'm Adrian Tice. On October 11th, 1987, 500,000 people participated in the March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. It was the second such demonstration in our nation's capital and resulted in the foundation of over 100 LGBTQ organizations. From this moment also came the idea of a national day to celebrate one's coming out and to promote a safe world of LGBTQ+ individuals to live truthfully and openly. This is celebrated each year on October 11th. Here at Emerson, we recognize that coming out in order to live openly isn't something you do once or even for 1 year. It's a decision that you make every single day of your life. Every coming out experience is unique and must be navigated in the way most comfortable for the individual. Whether it is for the first time ever or for the first time today, coming out can be an arduous journey. It is a brave decision to live authentically. Today, we celebrate you, wherever you are on your journey. Know that you are seen and that you are loved. The anthem the choir will sing next is a tribute to a college student in Wyoming whose heartbreaking murder in 1998 became known as a targeted crime against a gay man. His name was Matthew Shepard. Matthew's terrible death inspired a measure in Congress to expand the 1969 U.S. federal hate crime law to include crimes motivated by a victim's actual or perceived gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. In 2009, President Barack Obama signed the landmark federal act into law. The story of Matthew Shepard's life and death was set to music by 2016 composer Craig Hella Johnson in a concert-length work called Considering Matthew Shepard. This morning's anthem, Meet Me Here, is an epilogue at the end of the piece. It's an invitation to each of us to approach harsh, divisive fence that has so separated us, to lay down our sorrow there, and discover the healing, joy, and shared hope that can be found where the old fence ends and the horizon begins. May the words and music of this anthem inspire you to believe in the redeeming power of love and community.
Joy in the sea.
That song is so important because it speaks about the stories of children lost to us. And we have 3 Emerson members who are here to tell their own stories. And first, we'll begin with Riley.
I'm not that tall. Here we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Riley. I've already cried once this morning, so, just so you're aware, I don't know. When Michael took the red label off the blue crayon, I lost it over there for a moment. So, Papa, partner, friend, teacher. These are just a few of the words that describe who I am, my identity. A few more words that I also identify with include autistic, polyamorous, queer, transgender, and AFAB, which is an acronym for assigned female at birth. Some of you may be familiar with the now outdated term FTM, female to male. My journey started when I was quite young. Basically, as far back as my earliest memories, I knew that I was very different from my older sister. She talked about growing up and having a husband and being a mommy. When we played house, she only ever wanted to be the mommy. I always wanted to be the dad, although sometimes she could convince me to be the little boy instead. I always knew that I was different. I didn't dream about growing up and having a husband or even a wife. I didn't dream about having children. I couldn't imagine my life that far ahead because something felt strangely unsettled. I knew that everyone thought that I was a little girl, but I also knew that I wasn't like the other girls. I wasn't one of them. Whenever I tried to find the words to describe this, words failed me. Considering that I grew up in the 80s, I feel that for the most part, my parents dealt with all of this pretty well, at least with prepubescent me. I had all the toys the other boys in the neighborhood did: Transformers, dump trucks, G.I. Joes, Ninja Turtle action figures, Hot Wheels, you name it. I probably had it. My bike was my favorite color, red. I climbed trees, caught frogs, went fishing with my dad, and rode a skateboard. I didn't have my first friend that was a girl until 6th grade, and really I had more of a crush on her than anything else. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that most girls only liked boys that way. When puberty started and menstruation arrived, I suddenly became a different child. I was no longer the carefree child I had once been. Depression hit hard. It began to feel like my body was betraying me. Up until this point, my life as a quote-unquote tomboy had been pretty fulfilling. Perhaps not as much as it could have been, but I was mostly happy. Due to the changes puberty brought on, I attempted suicide multiple times. The last attempt, when I was 16, landed me in ICU for a week, followed by being in a cardiac unit for another 5 days and a regular hospital unit for 2 more days, before being sent off for long-term psychiatric care. My mother hoped I could be medicated and cured and be returned to her as a normal girl who only liked boys. A very long 6 months later, I returned home heavily medicated. At my therapist's strong suggestion, my mother did get me into gender therapy. A few sessions in, I began to feel like someone finally understood me, and I was beginning to find words to explain how I had felt my entire life, until my mother shut it all down and refused to let me go anymore. What would the neighbors think? What would the people at church say? She cared more about how she would be viewed than whether or not her child lived. So I boxed it all up into a compartment in my brain and locked the door and threw away the key. I conformed to the societal and familial expectations that were being thrust upon me. In my 20s, at our mother's urging, I finally began dating my high school best friend, who had had a crush on me since the day he met me when he was 14. I later married him. Several years later, along came Daniela. Daniela has been my biggest blessing. The universe knew what it was doing when it was decided that this child would be mine. She has never hesitated in regards to my transition and has been my biggest supporter. I have very little family left in my life, but having her is all I've needed. Over the course of the last 7 years, she's watched me go through the early phases of changing my hairstyle, changing the clothing I wore, and then 3 years later, as I began my medical transition, she watched me go through weekly injections of testosterone, grow facial and body hair, poked fun at me when my voice cracked during the many ups and downs of my voice changing, and seen multiple transition-related surgeries as well as their extensive recoveries, including almost 2 years of chronic, daily, severe nerve pain after my top surgery before having a life-changing revision done this past April that surprisingly abruptly ended the nerve pain. Never once has Daniela expressed any negativity. She just knew and accepted that this is my life now, that this is what made me happy again. When I began my medical transition in the very early part of the pandemic, my then landlord discovered what was going on. She immediately gave me less than the legal amount of time to vacate as soon as my lease ended without the option of renewal. And thus began my homelessness that lasted for over 3 years. During those 3 years, I put myself through college. I worked 40, 75, 120-hour work weeks, semester after semester, and I still couldn't make ends meet. During that same time, I also fought several custody battles for Daniela while recuperating from surgeries. In September 2021, after suffering with depression and anxiety for over 20 years, I finally began taking a prescription medication that changed my life. It took me almost ending my life again, while in the height of that daily chronic severe nerve pain, for me to realize and accept that psychiatric medication wasn't my enemy and wouldn't take away and change who I am despite my mother's hopes that it would. I had internalized that from all those years ago. By this point, I was proud of who I am and I didn't want to change that. And I never will. I want to leave you with the words that someone said to me that September, in case you are mentally not in a good place, especially if you have contemplated suicide. I need you to know that if you ever left this world, part of the sun would go with you, and the world would only be shades of gray. Promise me you will stay. Stay here and fight. The world needs you. I need you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bellamy. I was born a baby and raised as a girl. However, I was not raised with strict gender roles. I was allowed to play with any kind of toys, and I really liked any kind of toys I really liked, and my toy collection consisted both of Bratz dolls and Hot Wheels. A huge change happened, though, when I started middle school, and I insisted of wearing clothes exclusively from the men's section. I wanted short sleeves that brushed my elbows and absolutely nothing see-through. All signs pointed to my disdain for traditional femininity in the early, not like other girls, early 2000s manner. I continued my masculine dress well into high school and college, and only donned a dress for other people's sake or special occasions. I met my friend Chris while working at Michael's in 2018. I was about 23 at the time, 22. So if you're non-binary, are your pronouns they, them? I hesitantly asked Chris, my face firmly planted into the bead aisle. Chris laughed off my awkwardness and explained a bit about their identity. I hardly knew what non-binary was, and that it could be an option for me. I went home that night questioning my own identity. I reached out to Chris and a few other friends and began my research into gender identity. I consumed YouTube videos and blogs, books and zines, experiences from friends, and my own journal entries in search of answers from both within myself and outside myself. I was in such a rush to find an answer. I wanted to know my gender identity title. I opened Amazon and looked at gender identity flags with my mouth watering, waiting to find the correct flag. I wanted to find a home in my identity. I also found my pronouns pretty fast. While talking to one of my friends one day, I decided that I was okay with my current pronouns, she, her. Then maybe I wasn't. Then maybe add they to my current pronouns. Then maybe I wasn't okay with she, her at all. Then I settled on they, them. My adding of he, him to my pronouns would not come for quite some time. Then came another crucial part of my identity, my name. I never liked my birth name. It was too short, one syllable. I wanted a longer name that could be shortened into a nickname, so I searched on baby name websites and looked for B names until I came across Bellamy. It stuck pretty well. It was a good name, and so it is. My gender identity journey would not be over yet and still isn't. There's always more to figure out and explore in regards to self-realization, but for now, I'm okay with where I am and who I have learned about. And I am continuously learning about who I am and who I am becoming in this community, and for that I'm grateful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm James. So everyone's coming out story is a bit different. Some are easy, some are very difficult. Many are never told. This is part of mine, and also a bit of my sister's. It's important for me to mention the story of my sister, Angela Rose Elliott, Angie, because it's part of my own, and because she's not alive to tell her own. I don't, and I can't tell a great deal of it, but it's impossible to fully separate our short stories. I began to realize that the attraction I had to other boys and men was not the same as others felt when I was around the age of 11 or so. I discovered it had a name, homosexuality, in church. It wasn't for a few years that I would hear the word gay, I believe on the Donahue talk show. Growing up bouncing from my father's house to my mom and stepfather's house was quite confusing. Both were fundamentalists, Southern Baptists specifically, and my stepfather was much more strictly so. His bigotry, racism, sexism, and homophobia were on much more full display. My father's house was much more chaotic and unregulated, even neglectful. There were forms of inappropriateness and physical, spiritual, and emotional abuse that we experienced as a child in both houses that only much later learned to call abuse. These were not the cause of my sexual orientation, of course, but they did complicate my eventual acceptance of it. I learned from the church I attended with my mom and stepfather all about the so-called evils of homosexuality. I had a religious, spiritual experience in late elementary school that the Southern Baptists call getting saved. I genuinely asked for Jesus' pardon for my sins, to be forgiven, and honestly wished to turn my life over to serving him. I truly believed this was the only path to heaven, and that I would need to lead others to God to spare them the eternal torment that I had been given freedom from. I believed if I had temptation, I just needed to pray to God, and he would give me the strength to overcome it. When it comes to my attraction to members of the same sex, that simply didn't happen. I used to pray daily, at least, that it would. I suffered from depression and anxiety early on. Complex post-trauma stress was certainly a part of this. I concluded that this was a test that I was being put through, like that of Job. I began to pray that I would be spared or to have the strength to banish these evil thoughts. I prayed to God to spare me from the forms of particularly emotional abuse that my sister and I experienced. I came to believe that there was something deeply wrong with me. I began to be terrified of the rapture. I suspect that I would be left behind after this faithful departed this world in a twinkling, leaving the sinners to endure the final tribulation on earth. Even decades later, after I left the church, I would sometimes panic if I was alone much longer than expected. As an early teen boy, these were difficult thoughts. I began to pray to be spared any way God needed. I prayed nights that God would let me die in my sleep rather than go to hell or suffer the way that I did. In the 5th grade, a journal was taken away from me because I was writing in class. I somehow convinced the teacher that the practice suicide notes in it were for a story I was writing. My first suicide attempt when I was 14. I turned 16 in a psychiatric hospital where I spent 3 months in 1987. I thought about coming out to my parents then, even though I had asked my stepfather previously what he would do if my sister or I came out as gay, and he had replied deadpan, "I would kill you," although he later denied saying any such thing. I'd come out to my sister shortly before this. It was years before she would return the favor and tell me she was a lesbian, even though she was 4.5 years older than me. I probably would have come out to my parents then while I had some support, but for the presence of one person. There was a psych tech who led the boys' portion of the gender psych education group. He typically used most of it to rail against the evils of homosexuality. His church was only then getting started. He's now the head of a wealthy megachurch that teaches the prosperity gospel. Eventually, I was able to move back in with my father. This largely got me away from my stepfather's influence and had the benefit of allowing me to do pretty much whatever I wanted to in my mid to late teens. I dropped out of school my senior year, in part because I was partying so much, and in part because I never planned for life beyond high school. I always knew that I would be dead before that time. Fortunately, I did develop a group of close friends. I was even accepted by them when I came out, only losing one friend in the process. This was in the late 80s. I even went back to high school and graduated at the age of 19. Somehow, though, I never found a supportive gay community at that time. I had many close friends who accepted me, but I never had a relationship until I was in my mid-20s. The members of the gay community that I met, I couldn't connect with in the way that I wanted to. I'd been so damaged, perhaps, by my experiences that I only felt safety in the tightly knit group that I found support in. I was at times desperately lonely for a relationship, but unwilling to venture out of the safe pocket I had found. I got much better. I had lots of therapy. I started interacting with the gay community. I had my first long-term relationship. My sister began to progress into mental illness. She'd been living in a happy relationship with a woman in Arkansas when a traumatic event happened. She began to lose touch with reality. My life was getting better. Hers was getting worse. She moved back in with my grandmother. Angie began to respond to voices no one else could hear. She joined the Army in her 30s. She failed to make it through boot camp. She'd long struggled with her own identity, but she'd seemed to get past that until this trauma. She moved in with my aunt and uncle, who took her to a Southern Baptist church and prayed for her to be straight and to be healed. Angie was living with my grandmother for a while, then with my dad when she became uncontrollable. She called me the F word one day, shouting it at me for no apparent reason. I tried to get my parents to step in and force her to a psych hospital. I tried to get them to remove the guns from the house. I broke up with my first partner on September 10th of 2000. It was a long time coming, and I felt really good about it. And that I would now be able to go on and have a healthy relationship with another man and to be part of the community of gay men that I had started to join. The next day, 9/11/2000, I got the call that my sister had died by suicide. It took me a very long time to recover from this, if one can ever be said to do so. The coping skills I'd gained, the handles of my own mental illness, I'd learned in years of therapy, some of it paid for by my sister, went out the window. Eventually, close to a decade, reached a place of healing. I met my partner, Stephen, whom I've now been with close to 20 years, and then eventually went to college for the first time in my mid-30s, determined to become a therapist so that I could help other people the way that I had been helped and the way that my sister was not. I've made many friends over the years, but that initial group of amazingly supportive friends that I had eventually broke up about 10 years ago, and that was another traumatic experience. Somehow, I never replaced them or felt that I was part of the larger LGBTQI communities. Certainly, I had gay friends, mostly those of my partner, or a few precious ones here and there, but I never felt like I was connected to the community, even as I served it as a therapist. So I've been going to Emerson this past year. I've realized that I've held myself off from community in general in some interesting and unfortunate ways. Here I can be my full self and still be a spiritual person and have community with people who do not think like me, but still love and accept me. I don't have to relegate myself to a tiny group of close friends to be myself. I've been pushing myself in lots of ways, and Emerson has been part of that. I'm touched by being around so many people who understand me and those who don't, but are willing to try.
Would you join me in meditation and prayer? And I'm going to cry. I know it's going to happen. These words are by Reverend Laurel Littlejohn Gray, and there is a prayer she wrote called The Prayer for Queer Kids. When I Google prayer for queer kids, the first hit is all sin, asking God to force repentance for what I call holiness. And so I yell, and I swear, and I rage, and I feel the heat of fury mixed with protection. Absolutely not. These things they despise, I call sacred. This being oneself in a world that suggests repentance with a tone of holier-than-thou damnation. No, not here, not in this house. There will be no repenting for the courage to love honestly, for the ways your gender beckons you to bloom. No, this is a prayer for the queer kids, a ring of fire, protecting the Eden that exists inside of embodied love. In this house, we speak only of the holiness of existing honestly, and living and loving fully. My prayer for queer kids is this: may you find the people who love you fiercely. May the God of grace fill your lungs with life. And when people leave you gasping through tears, may you know in your bones that you can never be separated from all that is sacred, because it exists inside of you. It exists in every gesture of love you dare to offer the world. You are a salve to the soul bruise of anyone who believes they are only somewhat worthy. You are an act of holy defiance, and you, my dear, are glorious. You, as you are, now and forever. Amen. I came of age in the 1980s during a time when the movement for gay and lesbian rights was gathering steam. And in 1990, my Unitarian Universalist minister came out to the congregation behind the pulpit, and 3 years later, that congregation celebrated his wedding. The whole congregation was invited. And that bold statement, a time in the heart of AIDS, a time in the heart of when so much backlash was happening, it was a bold statement of acceptance, and I learned what a loving community could look like from that. Yet, I see in the younger generation the new movements for trans rights, for fluid descriptions of sexuality and gender, of acceptance of new pronouns, of new ways of being in the world. It is the children and the youth amongst us that are asking us to deconstruct the boxes that we have been trying to put them in. Given the pain and the tragedy shared so vulnerably today by our beloveds about their own stories of coming out, we owe it to the younger generations to hear them and to respond with care. May we be inspired to believe in the redeeming power of love. So as we end this service, a glitter blessing will be offered. And this is not offered by me, as if I have something special or magical to offer by wearing this robe and this stole. This glitter blessing will be offered by the youth, for it is they who have much to teach us. The glitter blessing is a recognition of the sacred beauty inherent in every person. And glitter, a little bit of sparkle. Glitter has long been a symbol for the LGBT movement of gritty, sparkly hope in the face of prejudice and oppression, of joy and pride in the face of hatred and bigotry. Glitter, as anyone who has ever tried to vacuum it up out of the carpet knows, that glitter is resilient. It is tenacious. It is the briefest beam of sunlight, causing it to shine even out in the darkness and dreariest of spaces, and its beauty comes from its brokenness. Glitter sparkles because it has many different broken pieces coming together, changing in every moment as the light shines on it. So this glitter that we share with each other today is a reminder that each of us is beautiful in our sacred imperfection, in our ever-changing selves, in our glorious plurality, and it is non-toxic, recyclable, and suspended in a aloe gel that's safe for your skin. So I invite the youth now to come forward and grab some glitter. And you are invited to come forward in a moment. You'll be offered a small dab on the back of your hand, and then you can rub it on and see the glorious shine. And then you can circle back to your seat. If you cannot come forward today, raise your hand and we'll bring it to you. And if you are online, know that witnessing is participating. Watching and holding space is an important role as well. Please come forward. Look around. Look around at the beautiful, shining faces surrounding you. Look at the amazing thing that our blessed bodies gathered in this sanctuary share together. Every body in this sanctuary is beyond it is a holy thing, and every person a sacred being made of stardust, and now we sparkle like stardust. Take a moment and marvel at how extra glittery and fabulous we are today. I offer these words as a blessing and closing words. May you receive and reflect love everywhere you go, and know in your deepest heart and in every day that you matter and you belong. May you hold on to hope and to your inner sparkle when discouragement and despair beckon. May the beauty that is you shine out bright as the stars from which we came and from which we shall all return. And together, may we make this place a place of welcome, of healing and connection and plurality. Together, may we practice compassion and courage, seeing and celebrating and supporting each other. And today, may we be the sparkling force of love that this world so desperately needs. Let us join together in singing the last hymn, and let me explain that it is number 1014. It was originally written as Standing on the Side of Love. But for those with mobility issues, they asked if we could change it to Answering the Call of Love, because all of us can do so. So just know that if you have a hymnal mentioning the old words, it's answering to the call of love. Thank you.
Behold,
Ollie, would you be able to come and help us put out the chalice now? You can use the snuffer and just snuff out that chalice. Thank you so much. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Join us for service reflections here in the sanctuary. Join us with your own story, with an open heart, with compassion for each other. Or go to one of the many offerings today being offered afterwards. There are some exciting things happening, including eclipse classes maybe even to be had, huh? So as our service ends, go now in peace and take peace wherever you go. Amen.